Thank you for your patience if you've been logged on for a few minutes, and welcome to the latest Pathway to CFO webinar. I'm Adam Napper from Farage Andersen, if you've not tuned into one of these webinars previously. Tonight I've got with me the CFO from My Food Bag, Keiran Andersen. Good afternoon, Keiran.
Hello, everyone.
And we've also got Sam from My Food Bag, who works with Keiran. Sam, if you can just tell us your role at My Food Bag and how you fit in.
Hello, everyone. My name's Sam. I'm the Group Customer Services Manager, so I look after all of our customer experiences in New Zealand and Australia. I've been reporting to Keiran for the last 18 months and am here as a fountain of knowledge as My Food Bag and also a really big supporter of Keiran.
We'll be hearing more from Sam when we talk about My Food Bag shortly. But if we flick onto the next slide here, if we can, for the housekeeping. You should have this screen in front of you now. In the top left, you've got an arrow there which you can click to minimize, so you can see the lovely PowerPoint presentation I put together for the webinar. Further down, there's a white chat box there. Now, we love questions. Feel free to fire questions through. We've had a few sent to me already in advance, but part of the advantage of tuning in live is that you can ask questions. The questions are all anonymous, so don't be afraid of disclosing your identity or asking anything silly. We may not ask all the questions, of course, if we've got some duplication, but I'll try and get to as many as we can. So today's guest is Keiran. Keiran Andersen from My Food Bag. I'll obviously you've got a nice little synopsis which was taken straight off the website there, Keiran. But just give us a quick overview of who you are, and then we'll go on to the next slide shortly and talk about your previous career.
So yeah, I've been with My Food Bag for just over 18 months, and other CFO there. I'm a chartered accountant. I trained with BDO and started in audit, and then went travelling overseas and spent 7 years working in companies in the UK, and returned to New Zealand 3 years ago with 2 small children to start a family here in New Zealand.
You returned with the children?
With one, and then had another one while we've been in New Zealand.
Right, and I've just flicked onto the next screen. Actually, that should give a lot more of an overview of your background. So this was totally plagiarised from your LinkedIn profile. I hope that's okay, but it obviously paints a picture quite nicely of your professional background. So look, talk us through firstly your education, because obviously that's a good place to start, and then just go into a little bit of depth in terms of how those roles came about and how you've worked your way into your current position.
Yeah, cool. So I did my training at Waikato Uni under a BMS, so focusing on business management and accounting. And after 4 years with that there, I went and did my training with BDO, where I worked in insurance services, and really enjoyed my time there. Had a wide variety of clients, from some listed companies right through to smaller organisations and even some schools. Once I qualified, I decided that I wanted to go overseas, and so went over for the 2-year working holiday that extended and extended. I did a year at the BBC, which was a really great place to work, really interesting environment. But then wanted to get into a company that was more commercial. The BBC had lots of great products but was slow to change. So then went on to Akzo Nobel. I started there on a 3-month contract.
Which rolled over a little bit.
Yeah, rolled over, and then realised that that I really wanted to go permanent because of the opportunities and the training and development that was on offer. I started off doing the like a financial reporting type of role, and it was about the time that Sarbanes-Oxley was really big, and we had to provide all the documentation for that. So I led that project across the paints business, which was really big. It was it's a business that was turning 600 million annually, and then from there. There were a lot of different roles that came available. I did a year up in Newcastle and was the financial controller of the Hammerite site. and then moved back down to London and worked within commercial finance for about 3 years. So that was, I really enjoyed that. I was working with the sales and marketing teams and negotiating contracts and working on promotional evaluations and really the commercial side of the business. The project accountant role I did for a little while I was having my first child, and then returned to New Zealand. And I was on maternity leave for a good few years, and then saw initially the position at My Food Bag was a part-time finance manager role. So I applied for that role in September 2013.
Right, I've got a couple of questions. Feels like I'm interviewing you. So Akzo Nobel, obviously it's a well-known name, but just describe for me in a couple of sentences just who they are and just the scale of that company. Just give everyone a bit of an overview, because that's a big chunk of your career, isn't it?
It is. So it was when I started, it was ICI Paints, which was a FTSE 100 company. It really it was the paint manufacturing brand. So we sold Dulux, Hammerite, Polycell brands to all of the big DIY sheds, so people like B&Q and Homebase.
Yeah.
And it was a company that was really steeped in history. It was one of the big old employers in the UK, and was a big corporate with all of what that entails.
Where's head office? Is it British?
It was British, yeah. It was based in the lovely Slough, just out of...
I should know that, because I'm my family from Slough. Pretty onto it, eh? And in terms of visa, did you go over there on a working holiday?
I did go over on a working holiday.
So how did you extend your stay somewhat?
So it was during the period where it was really easy to extend, and I transferred over to a highly skilled migrant visa, which, if you've got, at the time, if you had a CA qualification, you were earning a decent amount of money, it was a thing that was really easy to do.
All right. And on the return here, obviously a couple of years maternity leave, and it was initially advertised as a part-time finance manager role. How did it, so you applied to an advert, did you, or how did that?
Yeah, I did. At the time I wasn't thinking about coming back to work, and I had a girl flick me the Facebook ad, and I thought, wow, that looks like a great opportunity. It was part-time. I thought, I can make that work with what I've got going on in our family, and did a little bit of research into the role and saw the calibre of people, and was a customer myself, and thought, right, I'm going to give this a go. It looks like a great opportunity, and applied. And within probably about the first month, I sat down with my line manager at the time, James Robinson, and said, do you know, this really isn't a part-time role. I need to be full-time. I also need an assistant accountant. So I went back and talked to my family and said, right, okay, this is what it's me. I'm going to have to go full-time within 3 months. How do we make this work?
Yeah.
And that's what we did.
We'll come back to that whole work-life balance thing a bit later,
yeah.
I think. But we'll click over onto the next slide, which I can't seem to do, Ian. Can you? Oh, there we go. Not pressing the button hard enough. Tell me, 2015 New Zealand CFO Awards. You won something, didn't you?
I did.
Tell us about that.
Well, it was. I was really flattered. I got approached before Christmas and asked to enter the award. The SME Financial Leader of the Year, which was the category that I won, was a new category. And so I applied over the Christmas break. It was a really good opportunity to just take stock of what I've done and really think about the progression from a finance manager to moving to a CFO, and what we've delivered over the period. It's been a period where the company has grown significantly. I think we were doing, we've tripled our turnover within the time. So it was a really good chance to go back and have a look at what we've done, and I was successful, which has been very pleasing. I
didn't actually find this out till I was Googling Keiran to prepare these slides, so she's quite humble as well. We'll talk about a few of the other points a bit later, but let's look on to the next slide here, which I think it's all about you guys, your company. I might give Keiran a bit of a break here, and we'll take a few minutes to talk about my feedback because obviously it's growing phenomenally and a really neat company. So Sam, go for it. We've got you've got the slide there. Tell us about the company.
Well, my food bag was born out of the idea of our CEO was about to go into labour for her first child, and she thought, there's no way I'm going to go to the supermarket when I'm just about to have a baby here. So she thought there's got to be an easier way, and being from us, she's from Stockholm originally in Sweden, and there was a company similar to my food bag over there, and she really saw the need in New Zealand for a company that delivers amazing, fresh, beautiful ingredients to try and get families to come together a bit more, to cook together, to eat together, to sit around the table, to make sure that they're getting everything that they need, nutrients-wise, and that way you can splurge a bit on the weekends as well. So she also got Nadia Lim, who's New Zealand MasterChef, the second MasterChef winner as well, to come on board, and she's really well known for her amazing, healthy and nutritious meals as well, so that was a really great addition. And then obviously Teresa Gadding, the ex-CEO of Telecom, on board as well. So we had this powerhouse of amazing women running this fantastic company, and it's done an incredible job of fulfilling the needs of what I think is a significant amount of New Zealanders and Australians at this point as well. And it has revolutionised and changed the way that we eat. So.
Talk us through the growth just in terms of numbers then.
Specifics.
You don't need absolute specifics. Approximate's good enough.
We currently have over
16,000 subscribers.
16,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
So pretty impressive. It's grown 400% since I started. So that's a pretty impressive growth rate and a really good-looking graph. So we're really pleased with that, and it's growing at a phenomenal rate continuously as well.
And you guys are now in Aussie.
In Aussie, yeah. I think one of the stats that we have is that we've delivered over 4 million meals across Australia and New Zealand. And we've got 3 bags. So we're catering for different aspects of the market. We've got a classic bag which feeds a family of 4 to 5 for 5 nights, a family bag which feeds a family of younger children for 5 nights, and then a gourmet bag which is a 4-night option for couples. So really tailored at the different aspects of the market. The family bag was a new addition about this time last year, and really grown in popularity, and is probably one of our biggest selling bags now.
Talk us through those 4 points there for people that are completely unfamiliar with the company. We all know what happens, but just talk us through those 4 stages so everyone's very clear.
Yes, so we do all the planning for you, the planning and the shopping, everything. So all you have to do is come onto our website, tell us what bag you'd like, give us your address and your phone number, and then all the thinking is done for you on a Sunday or a Monday, depending on where you live in the world, in Australasia. They will deliver everything to your door for all your recipes, your meat, your produce, your dairy, everything you need there apart from a few pantry staples, things like olive oil, salt, which everyone has, otherwise you'd end up with a lot.
Yeah.
So and then you just follow the ingredients with everything you've been given and the recipes, and you cook over those 5 nights knowing that you have everything that you need. You don't have to go rushing out to the supermarket and buy something that you've never heard of before. Garam masala was one for me, and things like that.
Spelling that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all there for you, no thinking needed.
All right. Which one? We've got a question here. There's a few questions coming through actually.
Alongside the financial growth, how's the actual growth of the company affected the role of the CFO as well, the exponential growth, not just in the numbers, but people.
And the people, yeah, well that has changed a lot. I joined the company, and there was, I think, about 8 or 9 people, and was a finance function effectively of a part-time resource. And that's grown over the 18-month period that I've been there to a finance team of 4 full-timers. And so in the beginning, I really made sure that we had good processes in place, really to make sure that that the systems and processes were robust and we could be relied upon, and it meant, once we got these additional heads in, we were focusing, making sure that the transactional processes are right, and then the financial controls are in place and the reporting is accurate, because then what that led me to do was to be able to kind of step out of the day-to-day detail and look at that forward view. Because our growth has been so rapid, I spend, 2/3 of my time looking forward and working with the team about planning new products or changes to our delivery method, or really working in that forward-looking view.
We've got a few pictures on the slides up here. Obviously, there's a few of the people you mentioned there, Sam. In the top right, that's the core and the senior management team.
It is.
Not to mention husbands.
I think, and that's one of the unique aspects to our business as well, that we have the owners working along in the business. So, every day you're moving from really operational issues on a delivery type of issue to then stepping out in the next conversation about looking at the forward-looking strategic view, and being able to move between those two aspects is really important, and it's something that they do very well, and so as a team we need to be able to provide the right information and then also influence those decisions as they're being made when they're looking forward.
Talk us through the other pics there. So we've got, that's your current offices, is it, in the bottom right?
It is. Well, we've actually just moved. So that was a picture of us in our Parnell office. We're now in College Hill. We're now in Parnell, but very similar type of space. The bags looks like everything that you would get in a classic bag for a week. So the recipe card, which is all tested and planned out for you. The delivery, which is made on a Sunday in either one of our partner vans from Courier Post or one of our My Food Bag vans, ready for eating throughout the week.
Right, let's move on to your role, Keiran. We've got a few questions coming through. I'll probably go through a few of the questions that we don't cover towards the end, if that's okay. So your role as CFO, we've just started down this track a little bit, but just summarise for us in a nutshell your role as CFO, the functions that you fulfil at My Food Bag.
I think there's probably three kind of key elements to it. In the beginning, I really focused on the building the foundations of a good finance function, making sure we had good systems and processes and I could rely on the controls. And within a company that had only been going 6 months, that was, I was able to influence that right from the get-go because they pretty much were non-existent.
Yes, you inherited, was starting from scratch pretty much.
Pretty much starting from scratch, which is a really good opportunity to have because you set things out as you want them to continue. Then in any kind of fast growth business, cash flow is my #1 priority.
Yeah.
So making sure that we're doing really robust cash flow forecasts. I've got a few different mechanisms for monitoring that and really communicating changes to the team really on a timely basis to make sure they've got good controls over that. And then people, we've grown from a staff of probably about 8 or 9 when I started to now with over 40 staff.
Yeah.
So making sure that we had the right people that were committed to the company, were passionate about it, and also that brought the skill set that we were needing at a particular point in time.
And in terms of, you don't just look after finance, do you? There's a bit more to it than that.
Yeah.
What functions do you manage?
So I manage both finance and customer services, which has been a really great opportunity. There's lots of synergies with customer service in terms of retention, and we look after our customers, and if there is a problem with the bag, we are really generous in the way that we resolve issues, and so making sure that we have good processes around that has been really important. And also one of the kind of key metrics for us is obviously good profitability, but also making sure that customers are rating and enjoying our recipes. So Sam has a really good handle on the pulse around, what the feedback from customers, whether they love a particular recipe or they had a really good experience with their delivery driver, and feeding that back through and tying that through to the kind of what ends up in the P&L has been really useful.
It's not classically a function that reports into a CFO, is it, customer services?
No.
It's not, but it works really, really well.
If you've got the right CFO, of course.
Yes, of course.
Hey, look, we just had a good question in, actually. What are some of the crucial skills you see for members of a finance team in a high-growth company? Talking about personal attributes here.
Yeah, I think you need to really enjoy change because everything is always changing. So you need to be ready to look at the processes today and go and build them, and then in 3 months down the track and say, well, that's not working anymore, we need to do something different, or we need to improve that. So change it, being able to adapt and manage change is really important. I think in a small or in a startup business, you do everything. You do the really transactional stuff, and then you go through and it might be having a conversation about strategy in the next meeting. So you need to be able to move through, you know, all of the different skill sets to be able to, you know, do all of the roles effectively.
Would it be difficult, in your opinion, for someone that's never worked in a small business to adapt to that if they've worked in a large corporate their whole career?
No, I think it's about the mindset. So I've come from big corporates where everything was very departmentalised off, and it's about having the you know, wanting to get involved, being passionate about the product, and that's something that's also really important at My Food Bag. You know, one of the criteria is you have to be a foodie to be able to work at My Food Bag, because I think that's the kind of gel that keeps us all together, because, you know, we're forever, the guys are testing the recipes, we're going and tasting them, we're giving them feedback, and then, you know, it flows all the way through to what we're purchasing, and then what ends up in our P&L. So, you know, being a foodie and really enjoying that and buying into the concept is really important.
Who isn't a foodie?
Well,
There are some.
There are some. I don't understand
When I
myself.
went to your offices last week and found them, I just smelt it way down the corridor. It just smelled amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, favourite days for me are usually testing days, or when we're testing the Christmas bag is a particularly good day.
No one calling in sick that day, I'm sure. Next question I've got here, the key personal traits you see in an effective CFO is possessing, Keiran, obviously from your personal experiences.
Yeah, I thought about what I think is, you know, people expect a CFO to be, you know, to provide the rigour and to be really good at sound decision making. But I think what sets apart good CFOs from great CFOs is their ability to influence, and it's influencing at all levels of the organisation. So starting off with, you know, working with customer services or working with the transactional staff and getting them to understand how their jobs impact the business, and then, you know, working with the senior management team or the board and understanding what their needs are and providing the information at the right time, and, you know, operating in a proactive manner and really understanding their needs and being able to adjust your style depending on who you're talking to.
So influencing,
yeah,
be the number one.
Yeah.
Right. Next one, we may have just talked about a couple of these, but the unique challenges of your role, and how have you overcome these?
So the speed of change, I think, is probably the priority, and keeping up with the growth. And what we do to kind of support that is have really good staff. You know, people that are committed, understand our processes, working really proactively to identify issues and be problem solving in their approach, I think is really important. And really understand what's going to make the difference, and focus on those things. Don't get caught up with the things that are probably a bit of noise. You really focus on the key issues and look at, you know, resolving those, because processes within a fast-growing company are something that you always need to keep an eye on, because they do need to adapt as
Constantly
you grow.
moving, I'm sure. Tell me a bit of techie talk here. What systems do you use to get financial information and information out?
Well, it's something that's really topical at the moment, actually, because we've got our website where we do all the collection, and we store a lot of information for that. Has been designed for us separate, specifically, and it provides us really useful information around the customers' likes and dislikes and recipe ratings. From a financial aspect, I'm afraid to say, are still using MYOB and do a lot of working and modelling in Excel.
Yep.
But we are at the moment scoping an ERP to say, okay, well, for us to be able to scale to the next stage of growth from a financial aspect, we need to consider, a raft of considerations, and it means that, ERP implementation is on the agenda in the next 12 months.
What's the projected growth for the company do you foresee at this point in time? What's the
plan? It's I think it's been reported in the media that we've got a run rate of around 50 million. We haven't seen any let up in that. We've moved into Australia, which is a really new and exciting opportunity for us. That really is in its infancy, and where there's a lot of planning and development that is going into Australia, and we're committed to growing New Zealand further, but there's a lot of attention going into looking at Australia now and really getting that to hum.
So a few flights across the Tasman.
Yes.
Now, the last question I've got here, which is one where I've had a couple of questions around this already, actually. How do you juggle a high-profile CFO role, such as you've got, in a rapidly growing business with your personal family life?
Yeah, that's tricky. It is tricky. And I think there's a few aspects to it. I think it's about having really open and frank conversations with your employer and saying, look, these are the things that are really important to me. And what I need to do to be able to be successful in role. For me personally, what that means is that I take my kids to school in the morning and I'm there for dinner. And so that's what I do, and the team are really supportive of me doing that. I think in conjunction, I've got really good support at home. I've got a husband who is an accountant as well, so understands the stresses and strains of holding a position like this. So he understands, and I've got really good childcare. So that, I think, for me is the key, because I know my kids are really well looked after, and it means that I can focus when I'm at work on work, and then when I get home, my attention goes to the kids. And it may mean that I log on in the evenings, but that's what works for me.
And you can do that in this day and age with technology, can't you?
Yeah.
All right, we'll flick on to the next slide here. Now, this sort of focuses on the area of the jump from accountant to CFO. A lot of people tuning in today probably at that level where they're hopefully going to be CFOs in the future and interested in making the jump to those bigger jobs. How, in your opinion, how did you put yourself in the position to be considered for your current role? For instance, it was a finance manager role when you applied, and obviously it's become organically grown into a CFO role potentially. But did that just happen automatically, or did they go to market for a CFO, or how did that come about?
Yeah, I think there's two aspects to it. I think it's about choosing the opportunities. When you're presented with an opportunity, whether for me, whether it was in my food bag or some of the previous roles that I've done when I was in the UK, if you're presented with an opportunity that really looks like it's something for you, you need to kind of grab it with both hands and really work hard and drive hard to deliver well. You need to have the core competency and really understand the aspects of the role, understand the needs of the stakeholder or your manager, and really deliver on your commitments. And so I think it's a part of it's being in the right place in the right time, but it's also having the skills and experience to be able to go for that role. One of the things that has always been really important to me is when I've been planning my next role, I need to be doing something today that's going to get me my next role. And if I've got a development need or a capability gap to get me to that role, that's where I focus a lot of attention to make sure I pick up those skills which get me that next job.
What would be an example of one of those areas?
So when earlier on in my career, the people management side of it, I think, is something that you develop over time, and I don't think good managers are created overnight. I think it's a skill that you develop, and I think there's two ways, that I developed my skill in that area. One was really good training and development courses. I've done capability and coaching courses which are really useful, but also seeing people that do it really well and I know mentoring is one of the things that we're going to talk about, but aligning yourself with really good mentors or support persons so you can bounce ideas off people or learn from the way that they manage people, and I think that's what I found effective.
What's she like as a boss, and Sam?
She's fantastic.
You have to say that though, hey?
Well, I am on record. No, she's fantastic, very supportive. I feel like I can always talk to her when I have a problem or where I need some advice. She has helped me lead my team better, and I look up to her as someone that I want to be.
We'll talk about mentors again in a second. The next question is an interesting one. Could you describe an average day in your life at work?
Yes.
How much accounting do you actually do?
We were actually talking about this earlier, and there isn't really an average day. If I use today as an example, probably about, I spent half or 2/3 of my day with the people management side of it. So checking in with the team, making sure that going through their work, understanding what was going on. We're recruiting for a couple of roles at the moment, so it was understanding, what we're looking for in candidates for their doing the job spec, talking to the team to make sure that we've got all of the requirements through and getting that add up. And then probably spent maybe the last hour looking at cash flow. So yeah, a lot of my role now is more in the kind of managerial side of things, or working with the team on big projects. There are still things that are really important from a CFO point of view, cash flow, forecast, how we're tracking against those things, but it's definitely doesn't consume all my time.
Who does the grunt of the accounting work then?
Well, I've got a very good team. I'm really have a really highly motivated and highly performing team. We've got a really great assistant accountant that does all the transactional work for us, and Hannah, who couldn't be here today, is our finance manager across New Zealand and Australia, and she is a really safe pair of hands. She is really clear about the controls and processes in place, is really accurate in terms of her forecasting, and is really and communicates well around what the requirements are that are coming out of any kind of analysis that she's doing.
Leads quite neatly onto the next question. When recruiting people in your team, obviously you've recruited some people, you will carry on to do so. You've talked about this a couple of times, but obviously getting the right people into the business in your team is key to the success of the company. What do you look for in people when you A, looking at CVs, and B, interviewing people?
So for me, particularly in my food bag, we have a really fast paced culture, and it's all centred around food. So I think to be high performing in my food bag, you need to really have that love of food and be committed to the brand and understanding what our journey is. I look for people that are really have a really strong technical understanding and have a good range of skill set. But the thing that probably tips the balance for me is the interpersonal style. So they need to be a good cultural fit. They need to work well within my team, be able to work with the wider business, because finance isn't just something that sits and is very contained in the area. They are involved with the purchasing team and working with marketing on promotional evaluations. It's really important that they're able to interact with many different people in many different aspects.
So how do you test these things when you're going through a recruitment process then?
I think
the love of food and the cultural
If they're a customer already, that is ideal.
Yeah, it does make a big difference.
Yeah.
Also, passion comes through in an interview, I think, and making sure that they've done their homework. People that I employ really want them to work for my food bag. James has got a really good question. He asks, how much do you want to work for my food bag? And unless they're kind of jumping across the table at me, then I do ask, well, why are you interviewing for this role? Because it's a great opportunity. We're growing really quickly, so we need that passion and drive to be, to work within my food bag.
I'm glad you said that. It's something I say to a lot of my candidates. It's very, very obvious when you get to interview stage if your exit's a job or you really, really want that job because it's an amazing job, an amazing company. It does come across at interview stage, doesn't it? All right. Now, advice for up-and-coming accountants. We talked about this a couple of minutes ago. A mentor. How important is it to work under a good mentor, and how would you go about choosing one?
Yeah, I think I've had a few mentors through my career, and they are really valuable. It's a two-way street, a mentoring process, I think. Where it's worked the best is where I've worked for someone and I'm able to provide information and support to them to help them to do their role effectively, and through that they act as a really good facilitator for me to open doors and to provide that challenge and feedback where to move through different stages of my career. I think some of the best mentors that I've had haven't actually been in finance. I've had people that have come from the healthcare sector or were a sales director, so I had a very different skill set from me, but I was able to pick up different skills from them and have made me more effective in terms of the way that I manage people or the communication style that I use when I'm talking to sales and marketing. That's been really valuable. So it doesn't always have to be someone in finance, it can be someone from a different discipline.
And would you say that, leading on to the next question then, what sets talented CFOs apart from those accountants that would plateau in more hands-on accounting roles? So, for instance, learning all those softer skills from people outside of finance.
I think that it's really important. Business partner is this word that gets thrown around a lot, but it's really important that you're able to communicate effectively with different departments and be able to provide them with the information that they need, but also influence them to change their mind if they're have a different view from you, and be able to for them to trust your judgment and be able to have a relationship where there's a two-way dialogue. I think it's really important. So it is those softer skills, I think, that make finance people or CFOs more effective when they do that well.
Is there anything you'd have done differently in your career in hindsight?
Well, if I look at my food bag in particular, I'm a relatively new CFO. I took over the CF role in March last year, so the last 12 months I've spent a lot of time doing things for the first time and doing things really quickly because of this rate of change. And I think, on reflection, what I probably would have done differently is sought advice earlier. So if we were doing a particular bit of work around some tax implications, or there was something from a technical aspect I hadn't done before, I would have gone to our accountants and had a conversation with the partner earlier than I probably did. And my food bag moves at speed, so for me to be effective in my role, I've spent a concerted effort in the last 3 months really focusing on that. And if I haven't got the technical aspects of all of my role, I quickly go and find someone who does and have a chat with them.
Surrounding yourself with good people, not just employees, but also advisors. And
absolutely, we've got a really good relationship with our accountants in EY, and I'm regularly checking in with them for what's coming up on a wider aspect, but also any kind of topical issues that we have, and it's a relationship that works really, really well.
Okay, last couple of questions scheduled. You've obviously got some considerable overseas experience, Keiran. How much do you, at this point in your career, value getting that experience overseas?
For me, it was really, really valuable. I think particularly in the UK, there's the opportunity and the scope of work is very, lots of variety and lots of opportunities to do lots of different things. I do think that it can go one of two ways, really. You can go overseas and do lots of contract roles, and particularly when I was there was, you could earn a lot of money doing that. But that sometimes doesn't always reap benefits in the long term. What I decided to do was I did some contractor roles initially, but found a company that I really enjoyed and could see really good career progression and training, and focused on that company and staying within them, and they really supported me to pull together a wide variety of skills. I went from doing kind of reporting roles through to financial control, and then to commercial finance. So they invested in me and I grew my skill set. And what it's meant when I've come back to New Zealand is that I had a skill set that meant that I could go into a company like My Food Bag and be able to perform in that role. I think, if you've done lots of contract roles and your scope has been narrow, it's probably a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, looking back at your experience here, you kind of covered all bases, didn't you, in terms of the business partnering, financial controller, project manager, more of a reporting focus role, and then project. So yeah, I can see how that makes perfect sense. I've got a couple of quick good questions just come in before we wrap things up. Back onto recruiting. Have you made any recruiting mistakes? And were there any telltale signs when you were interviewing these individuals? You can say no.
Yeah. Well, I haven't always got it right. I definitely put my hands up to that. And I think what it really comes down to is fit for the organisation. Whether it's been when I've been in the UK in a big corporate or within My Food Bag, it's about understanding the requirements of the role and the culture that you need to be effective to be in a company, and making sure you get candidates that fit that. Where I potentially have made some mistakes, it's been a lot around the culture that we haven't quite got that right, or what they were looking for in the role was different to what we needed, and that's when I've run into difficulty. So what would I do differently, or how do I pick it? It's about really good spending the time during the interview process, explaining the requirements of the role, really laying it all out so that the applicants have a really clear understanding of what the role is, but also really challenging applicants and understanding, what are they looking for, what is their 2-year time horizon, 5-year time horizon, to make sure that it's going to be something a relationship that is long-standing.
Okay, good question we've had here in terms of the Australian expansion. What challenges are you finding in finance and customer services with the expansion into Australia? As these expansions can be quite tricky in new markets. Should we ask customer services?
I think from just even a recipe point of view, the style of food consumed in Sydney to Melbourne to Australia to Auckland to Wellington, it really differs. We have this common misconception that we are the same. New Zealand and Australia operate in the same sort of ways, and it comes down to just simple things that carbs are not a commonly consumed thing at dinner time, and we've always had potatoes and had rice and things like that in our dishes, as it's a very common thing in New Zealand. So just trying to adapt even our business model to suit Sydney while at the same time suiting Melbourne, who does eat carbs. It's just trying to adapt those sorts of things and making sure that we're serving customers in the correct way when their views or their desires do differ quite from what we are used to in New Zealand.
How do you identify those? Obviously.
Feedback?
Yeah.
Yeah, just we're in a great position that we are able to make changes very quickly based on our customers' feedback, and we've never made a decision that isn't customer centric. That's basically our MO, and anything that our feedback that we don't like carbs or we prefer more salads or something like that, we can implement that next week. So that's the really strong position that we're in to make change and to improve and to show our customers that we do listen and we do improve straight away.
And from a corporate perspective, Keiran, what challenges are you facing growing into a new market?
So the regulatory environment in Australia is different, and even simple things like GST is very different in Australia. Here it's a very broad brush of 15%. In Australia there's not GST on food, but on some food items. So particularly for our business, we needed to understand what that meant for our profitability and what it meant in terms of our systems and processes which we needed to adapt. So, you know, seeking advice at the right period, we contacted our accountants and worked through a process for that, identifying that and setting the structures up front, and then, you know, we review that quarterly with them to make sure that, you know, everything's in line. Getting the right support, just in terms of making sure that the requirements around all of the tax filing and the requirements for insurance and all of those types of things, we've scoped and then we've checked in with people as we've gone along, advisors.
I'm sure it will continue to keep you on your toes as well. We're coming up over 45 minutes, so I should probably start wrapping this up. Just to wrap things up from your perspective, Keiran, one piece of advice would you really give up-and-coming accountants in terms of a takeaway, not to use a food pun, for today's participants?
I think the single biggest thing for me is work for a company that you're passionate about. I've done it when I was in the UK and in New Zealand. It really makes a difference, because if you believe in the concept and you're committed to the brand or the group of people that you work for, that comes through in the work that you've done. And, you know, there is a lot of hard work to get to a CFO position, and, you know, if you're invested in it because you believe in the concept, sometimes when you do need to make sacrifices, you're willing to do that because, you know, you're committed to the company. And the other thing that, you know, my experience has been is take the opportunities when they're presented to you, because that's how, you know, that's what I've done in my career, and it really has worked.
It may not come about again for a
long,
long time.
Yeah.
However, I have found those that are good at what they do, more opportunities do appear. If we can flick onto the final slide there. So look, as you know, you may be listening to the recording anyway, of course, but we will record this webinar. It'll be up on Barra Jamison's website and YouTube tomorrow. Feedback is always good. Send me an email, adam@barrajamison.com, or flick me a message on LinkedIn if you've got any thoughts around the format of Pathway to CFO, or anything that we could you potentially want to see. The next Pathway to CFO webinar is scheduled for late May, so around a month from now, where I've got a success story of our Pathway to CFO series, Daniel Malherbe from Southern Spas, who initially came along as an auditor 2.5 years ago, who's now the CFO at Southern Spas. So he's going to come and talk to us in a month's time, and we'll just go through to the last slide they're in. We can just flip through there. I'm going to leave the floor for Sam. My food bag. Where do people go to find out more information and become customers?
Well, if you follow the website address on screen, or www.myfoodbag.co.nz or .com.au, you will find all the information you need, or alternatively you can email us at hello@myfoodbag.co.nz. We have an incredible response rate, and we'll be back to you within 1 business day.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time tonight, ladies. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Keiran.
Thank you.
Yes, obviously, send us a message, and sorry we couldn't get around to all the questions, guys. We had an influx of them tonight. Thank you.